Have you ever heard a story so wild it sounds like it's straight out of a superhero movie?
Well, the Bible has a few of those, and today we're diving into one of the most epic. The time a man literally outran a horse-drawn chariot for over 20 miles. This isn't just a story about a fast runner. It's a tale packed with power, prophecy, and a serious dose of the supernatural.
To really get what's happening, we need a little context. Imagine a land gripped by a severe drought, lasting for years.
The ground is cracked, the crops have failed, and the people are desperate.
This drought wasn't just a random act of nature.
It was a direct consequence of the nation's spiritual state.
The king Ahab and his infamous queen, Jezebel, had led the people of Israel away from their God and into the worship of a false deity named Baal. They set up idols, supported hundreds of false prophets, and basically turned their backs on the one who had promised to protect them.
Into this spiritual wasteland steps our hero, Elijah. He's a prophet of God, and he's not afraid to speak truth to power. He confronts King Ahab and declares that there will be no rain until he says so. And just like that, the skies close up.
For 3.5 years, not a drop of rain falls. It's a powerful and painful demonstration of God's authority.
This all comes to a head in one of the most dramatic showdowns in the entire Bible, on top of a mountain called Carmel. On one side, you have Elijah standing alone. On the other side, 450 prophets of Baal, plus another 400 prophets of Asherah, all backed by the king and queen. The challenge is simple. Which God can send fire down from heaven to consume a sacrifice?
And what happens next is pure cinematic gold.
Fire flashes down from the sky, consuming not just the sacrifice, but the wood, the stones of the altar, the dust, and it even licks up all the water in the trench.
Everything is gone. The people, witnessing this undeniable display of power, fall on their faces and declare that the Lord, He is God.
The showdown is over. God has proven His supremacy, and the false prophets are dealt with. But the story isn't finished. The other part of God's promise was the rain, and it's still bone dry.
So Elijah goes back up the mountain to pray.
He sends his servant to look toward the sea 7 times. 6 times, the servant comes back saying he sees nothing.
But Elijah persists in prayer.
On the 7th time, the servant returns and says, I see a little cloud about the size of a man's hand, rising from the sea. That's it.
That's the sign Elijah was waiting for. He immediately tells his servant to rush to King Ahab and tell him to get in his chariot and head home before the rain stops him.
Think about that faith.
He sees a cloud the size of a hand after 3.5 years of drought and knows a downpour is imminent.
Ahab, who just witnessed the whole fire from heaven incident, probably isn't in a mood to argue.
He gets into his royal chariot, the equivalent of a high-performance vehicle of its day, and tells his driver to floor it.
They need to get back to the capital city of Jezreel, which is about 20 miles away, before the dry riverbeds turn into raging torrents. And this is where our main event begins. The sky grows black with clouds and wind, and a heavy rain begins to fall. The long-awaited, desperate prayer of a nation is being answered. And as Ahab's chariot starts rumbling down the road, something incredible happens. The Bible says, the power of the Lord came on Elijah. Now, what does that mean? It means God gave him a supernatural boost. Elijah tucks his cloak into his belt, getting ready to run without tripping.
This isn't just a casual jog. It's a symbolic act of preparation for urgent divine business. Then he starts running.
And he doesn't just keep pace with the chariot. He outruns it.
Let's just pause and picture this scene. A man on foot is speeding past a royal chariot pulled by powerful horses, probably the best in the kingdom.
The rain is lashing down, thunder is likely roaring, and this lone prophet is just flying across the landscape. The soldiers, the driver, and King Ahab himself must have been looking on in absolute astonishment. How is this possible?
This wasn't about Elijah being an Olympic-level athlete. This was a miracle. It was a physical manifestation of the spiritual victory that had just occurred on Mount Carmel.
Ahab, in his chariot, represents the pinnacle of earthly power, human strength, and worldly authority. But Elijah, fueled by the power of God, effortlessly surpasses him. It's a living, breathing metaphor. God's power is greater than any king, any army, any chariot. God's agenda, carried by his humble servant, will always outpace the plans of man. Think about the message this sent to Ahab. He had just seen God send fire, and now he was seeing God's prophet break the laws of human endurance. There was no escaping the reality of who was truly in charge. It wasn't him.
It wasn't Jezebel.
It wasn't Baal. It was the God of Israel, the one who controlled fire, rain, and even the speed of a man's legs. Elijah's run was also driven by a sense of urgency. He was running ahead of the king, in a way, heralding the arrival of God's blessing, the rain,
but also preparing for the inevitable confrontation to come. He knew that this victory wouldn't be taken lightly by Queen Jezebel, who was Baalism's #1 fan.
His incredible run wasn't just a victory lap, it was a prophetic act, setting the stage for the next chapter in this intense spiritual battle for the heart of the nation.
It demonstrated that God's messenger and God's message would arrive with a speed and power that no one could stop. This story of Elijah's sprint is so much more than just a cool feat of strength. It's a powerful reminder that when we are aligned with God's purpose, He can empower us to do things that seem impossible.
Our limitations, our weaknesses, the chariots of worldly power or position that seem so much faster and stronger than us, they are no match for the power of God working in and through us. Just as Elijah prayed and saw God move in a mighty way, the story emphasizes the themes of prayer and obedience.
Elijah listened, he obeyed, and God showed up in a way that left no doubt about His sovereignty. It's a story of divine intervention, of God stepping into human affairs in the most dramatic way possible to fulfill His promises and reaffirm His authority.
From the fire on the mountain to the rain from the heavens and the prophet outrunning the horses, the entire sequence of events is a testament to a God who is active, powerful, and deeply invested in the lives of His people.
It challenges the beliefs of a society that had put its faith in lifeless idols and reminds them, and us, where true power comes from. So, the next time you feel like you're up against an impossible challenge, remember Elijah. Remember the small cloud that promised a downpour and the man who outran a king's chariot. It's a story that encourages us to have faith, to be obedient, and to trust that the power of God can carry us further and faster than we could ever manage on our own.
Thanks so much for hanging out and diving into this amazing story with me. If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into incredible stories. Let me know in the comments what you think is the most powerful part of this story.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, and God bless.